According to the details of the 2026 Appropriation Bill, the federal government has allocated less than 1% of the entire national budget to poverty alleviation programs, despite the country's alarming poverty rate and rising cost of living. Analysts say this allocation is troubling, given that recent data from the 2022 National Bureau of Statistics that indicated that year 133 million Nigerians were living in multidimensional poverty, a figure that has continued to climb and, of course, amid inflation, job losses and stagnant wages. Critics have argued that while government spending on infrastructure, defense and administration continues to rise, social investment and welfare programs have been drastically underfunded, raising questions about whether the budget, that is the 2026 budget, truly reflects Nigeria's development priorities. This revelation comes at a time when citizens are already feeling the weight of new tax policies, subsidy removals and currency reforms, all of which have intensified economic hardship for low-income households. To unpack this for us, the implications of this low poverty alleviation is the founder, Sesor Empowerment Foundation, Ier Jonathan-Ichaver. Good morning, Ier. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me on.
All right. Given Nigeria's current poverty rate, does allocating less than 1% suggest that poverty reduction is absolutely not a top government priority? And if we're to judge by what other developing nations were doing, what should be the best way to go about this?
So, yes. So, to be honest, when I saw that headline and I read the article, of course, we've been involved in working with poor people for many years. I also sit on the board of a microfinance NGO that works to support economically active poor women, particularly in business. And when I saw that article, the first thought that crossed my mind was the Nigerian government is not serious.
No, Ier, are you still with us? I seem to have some what she started with. The answer is obvious.
She says the Nigerian government seems not to be serious about tackling poverty in Nigeria, but there's still quite a lot to unpack on this issue. We have so many questions to ask our guests. We hope we can reconnect with her pretty soon.
And I get the sentiment when we see that, for example, defense has always gotten the highest budget over the years, yet we're not even done with the challenge of insecurity. In case anyone wants to bring up the argument about the fact that no matter how much you allocate to poverty, we may never be able to completely get rid of poverty. What we can do, however, is live above the poverty line, get many Nigerians above the poverty line, reduce the number of multidimensionally poor people that we have in our country. We keep increasing the budget to defense, yet with every year, we're still fighting insecurity, and some people don't seem to get.
And it would be nice to know what poverty alleviation is. Is it just giving handouts, exactly, and or creating an economy where businesses thrive, where you could have shared prosperity, where you could enable entrepreneurs to scale up and then employ people, pay them livable wages and things like that. And it's not like you're reinventing the wheel. Vietnam has done it. China has the world record of moving the largest people out of poverty in such a short time. So these are lessons we can learn from other countries on how they did it. And it's and I'm happy you mentioned defense and security, because poverty is tied to insecurity, because if people are poor and desperate, they won't be easy recruits for non-state actors and violent extremist groups to induce them with certain amounts of money. If they're gainfully employed, if they're not desperate, then you will not have that pool to choose from. So it's a win-win situation. When you take care of poverty, you also take care of insecurity. Do we have any? Let's check if Ier is back. Yes.
Okay. We hope to reconnect with her when she returns. But then again, don't forget that Nigeria has Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation. We know that ministry was fraught with a lot of negativity, especially with the fact that some monies that were declared to be missing from that ministry. Up until date, as we speak, we haven't recovered that money. The persons who were involved
have not been prosecuted.
They have not been prosecuted. They're still working freely.
So relieving someone of their appointments is not just
no, it's not. It's the same thing we keep saying to the police officers who, the Nigerian police force, when they do catch one of their members who has been involved in unscrupulous acts, and all they do is they say he has been relieved. He's now facing other trial and so on. That's not all. The question is, what happened to the problem? The problem is the major issue. The problem still remains what the focus should be on. And that's exactly what we have here. When you have a ministry, the Federal Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, which is responsible for policies, social protection, and the likes, and then you're now allocating just 1%. I was looking at it in Canada, for instance. If
your overall population, sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
We have 133 million people living in multidimensional poverty, and you're allocating 1%. If you had 100,000 people living in multidimensional, then that 1% will do, or 1 million people.
That's another angle to look into. Another problem we should also highlight here is the fact that when we talk about alleviating poverty in Nigeria, what we think about is one word that I hate so much right now: palliatives.
Palliative handouts.
I think palliative is the bane of Nigeria ascending into becoming a land of poverty. And I'll explain why. Because when you brandish poverty to look like a bag or a small bread, agege bread, a small box that contains agege bread, sugar.
It's the tokenistic approach to dealing with
What are you doing?
Yeah. But let's talk to the experts. I believe Ier Jonathan is back.
Yeah, you're there. Can you hear us?
Switch my internet.
Oh, that's fine. Thank you so much for doing that for us.
Okay,
so I don't know if you heard us, but you were talking before you.
Yes, I heard the tail end of what you were saying, and absolutely you're right. Nigeria keeps on going on about how it is in the international community, and our presidents and governors and everybody, they all run to China. Some of them, I'm sure, have business investments and interest there. And of course, China is the country that we know has been able to lift people out of poverty, the most number of people out of poverty in history, right? At least 100 million people they've been able to lift out of poverty. And they did that over the span of about 2 decades. And if you study what they did, what Nigeria does, they just take our government officials, just take a few bits and pieces here, put it together on paper, make these highfalutin noises, launch these big projects. They've got some of these strategies they have, and they never will put their money and their actions into what it is. They have on paper a strategy to lift 100 million people out of poverty by 2030, going by the strategy for poverty alleviation, with growth strategies that they've called it, or poverty reduction. How do you do that when you do not have electricity to be able to run industry? How do you do that when you're not encouraging industry and incentivizing manufacturing, service industry, tourism, hospitality? When you study what the Chinese did, for example, there's a village called Shibadong. I would encourage everyone to please go and read the story. You read how they sent in government officials working with experts and targeted poor households. They went from house to house, did deep data. Why is this household poor? Who are the people in this household? What is the demography? What skills do they have? What skills do they lack? Not only did they do that, they now formed these groups, those that could work, those that could do businesses, into cooperatives. Made sure they connected these rural areas to markets. Not only did they do that, they made sure whatever those people were producing, they looked at what they had comparative advantage in. That's a very basic economic concept. And of course, those who are economists in the government know this. You look at what you have comparative advantage in. Some of them could do cash crops, some of them could do kiwi fruit, and so on and so forth. And they invested in making sure those people could produce those things at scale so they could enjoy economies of scale, making sure they got those goods to market. And not only that, they actually secured and guaranteed markets at good value guaranteed that these people could sell these goods, and in some cases even export these goods at solid prices. And the results were incredible, that they could lift, in some instances, they had incomes increased by 30 times 35. And that's how we're able to lift people out of poverty. This was serious work. To be honest, I will say this, our government, one, they do not care, most of them, because they have second lives abroad. Many of them have second passports. If they're sick, they'll just jump on a plane. Our president does it all the time. So we need to begin to ask ourselves, are we even serious as a country? And we've answered that question in many ways. In some instances, the Chinese relocated the people. If the area was unstable, unviable, unsafe, subject to floods, they would relocate them to a safer location. We have, for example, in Lagos, demolitions happening left, right, and center, the recent one being Makoko, without an adequate plan for them to resettle these people. Are they not human beings? Are they not citizens? So that's why when I looked at this thing, I just read it and I just said, we're not serious. That our government thinks that by bandying about figures, billion naira, and saying we've allocated money, it's not just about allocating money. Of course, that's a very minute amount, less than 1%, but also it's about putting in the work, being serious, being sincere. I mean, we keep comparing ourselves to all these countries. They're taxing the people now, want to do more tax and all that. The question we should be asking our federal government is, okay, you're comparing yourselves to the UK, the tax days, our tax incidents. We're comparing yourselves even to China. Is the Chinese president going abroad for treatment? Are your senators, are their senators or those who are in their legislature, or what passes for legislation?
Even the social safety nets in this country.
These are some of the things.
Yeah.
The other thing that I actually missed, and thank you for bringing that up, was that there were also social protections put in place, as you said, the safety net, where they got micro health insurance, there was guaranteed access to health insurance, education, access to education, and all sorts of things, some kind of cash transfers that were necessary, in a very transparent way as well, which we are not seeing. We don't even have those safety nets in place. So I do not know how you're going to lift people out of poverty, right? If you're really serious, without safety nets in place for those who are the most vulnerable and the most exposed.
Now, Ier, we seem to have a very tough situation in our hands, and I don't see any sense of urgency, because when you have a population that is 100, when you have 133 million people living in multidimensional poverty, that's more than the combined population of, I believe, most West African states. It means it's a national security concern also, but we don't see this urgency. All we have, like you mentioned in the report, is it's quite lazy and aspirational, and they feel when you throw money at something or when you give people handouts, it solves a problem. Is it by design? Because people have mentioned that, the political class has weaponized poverty, and it's easy to sway the opinions of people that are multidimensionally poor when it comes to elections, and just give them handouts to do their bidding. My first question is it by design? And number two, are there low-hanging fruits, little things that we can just do that would that can remove people out of poverty?
I would say that perhaps it didn't start out being by design. It just started out in case of ignorance, not knowing. And of course, we don't run a meritorious system. Unfortunately, we have the oil, quote unquote, curse, as some call it. So once you're just dashing out billions every month to states for doing absolutely nothing, your productivity is not going to go into place. So as the people, of course, and your corruption is through the roof. People steal that money, reallocate it as they like. We've seen all the cases and the scandals with very little consequence. So what now becomes the order of the day is for them the political actors to figure out how can we perpetuate ourselves in power so we can continue to access this free oil wealth. So that's why they will now not apply themselves. First, they don't have the competence, they don't have the capacity, they do not have the character. The empathy is lacking, the compassion is lacking, we see that everywhere. And therefore, what they apply their energies to is perpetuating themselves in power. That is why if you have this alarming figure I mean, it's even now 139 million estimated by the World Bank. You have this alarming figure, and our political actors and leaders, they're busy going around talking 2027 instead of getting down to the business of the day. So, eventually it now becomes by design, because that's what they know. That's what they cannot give what you don't have, right? So if you don't have the know-how or the political will to drive it through, or the strength of character, it will now become by design. In terms of low-hanging fruit, there are absolutely low-hanging fruits, even in just the way that these, first and foremost, infrastructural development is critical. And we've talked about infrastructure. I heard that in the beginning of when the introduction was being said on the topic. But it has to be targeted, it has to be well targeted. It has to, let's even at least allow the people to breathe, right? As our president once said, let them be able to access markets, make business easy. And for goodness sake, the need to stop these demolitions and throwing people into further poverty. Of course, you have large populations in the Middle Belt, in the Northeast, and all across, displaced. Even here in Lagos, if you drive down that coastal road, drive through at night, you can see the masses of people who are displaced. How are they even targeting those? So it's to even get that data. Number one, you have a National Bureau of Statistics, put them to work. We have a ministry, civil servants. What are they doing? Some work hard, yes, but many of them just go in. They don't. So it's to think, one, low-hanging fruit. Let's get the data. The Nigerian Bureau of Statistics already has that, right? Or have something to start with, and begin to take an example from the Chinese and accelerate it. For me, I personally think that by this time, like you said, it's a national security issue. The government doesn't seem to care. If they begin to care and throw everything they have at this, and even limit themselves saying we're going to just focus and stay in Nigeria and do our work, like the Chinese did, as low-hanging fruit, I think that would happen. Just lastly, I'll say, if you look at the breakdown of this appropriation that they've done or what they've allocated, you see that a big chunk of that money is only focused on one state, Zamfara. Are we saying that only Zamfara has poor people? I'm not saying that we should not have stuff going to Zamfara, but why not do a targeting at the village or local government level and make sure that every local government has a consolidated poverty alleviation program, completely holistic, as we've talked about, and even pilot in one village or two villages, and do that across the nation, and really give it focus and be transparent with it. The government a few months ago said, they had allocated however much to poor households. Okay, so where's the data? Which poor households? Who? And I deal with a lot of poor people because of the work that we do with displaced people and people who are economically active but poor. Not one of them, and we've dealt with at least over 100,000 people or more over the years that we've been working. I've not heard one of them say, they received this thing from the government, or they got A, B, C, D, or whatever.
I wanted to ask, sorry to butt in. I was just going to ask that question. Have you come across any persons who said they received XYZ from the government? Because the government keeps saying that they have data and they go ahead to give money to those who are very poor, the poorest of the poor. Have you come across
but
these
they can't
persons?
share the names because of
security reasons.
Social implications.
Well, to be honest with you, I haven't seen that, but that's not to say that has not happened, right? And that's where, again, this black hole, if you're really doing this thing, and I'm sure some of it is happening in some places, why not be transparent? Why not share the lessons learned so that we can look at, okay, what have you done? How can we improve? How can we move? Again, it's this palliative culture. It's always a palliative culture because that's the easiest. They think it's a low-hanging fruit. It's not. It just keeps people enslaved.
You're putting Band-Aid on a wound.
Yeah, go on. You said it. You thought it was easy.
I said it just, this palliative culture just keeps people enslaved, makes them poorer, steals their dignity, and does not encourage industry, does not encourage innovation, right? Look at even all the technology we're using. It's all imported. You know, what we do the day America, for example, wakes up and decides they're going to shut down access to Facebook and Zoom and all of these things for African nations or for Nigeria. Or Gmail. Do you understand? We're not even encouraging that. Even though we have it, our national strategy says they're going to encourage innovations in these areas and that. So like I said, the Nigerian government is not serious about this. They are not showing themselves to care about the people. And we do need to see a lot more work going in.
But can't the long-term and the short-term plans work hand in hand? So yes, palliatives are keeping people enslaved, but the truth is, whatever plan the government is putting, even in the budget, it will take a while for the implementation of that to occur. So what do you say to respond to those who would argue that we can work on a long-term plan while also still providing short-term relief?
Oh, absolutely. But relief is just the beginning. And one of the things we do not see, which as you design poverty alleviation plans for households, for communities, you have to show a very clear pathway to sustainable prosperity for those people, for how you're going to lift them out of poverty. You don't just come with a bag of rice and leave for months. You've not communicated, okay, we're going to give you this bag of rice today. Next week, we're going to do some training for you on A, B, C, D, E, F, G. The following week, we're going to make sure that you get the tools you need, the assets you need to be able to develop and grow. Where in the meantime, we're working on this and that. What that does, it gives people hope. But what we're seeing is there are these palliatives just giving, no communication, no pathway, because there is no plan, generally speaking, that is going to be real, that is going to be worked with. And even when they say there is a plan and we have these strategies, they are not even being adhered to. And the assets that need to be, the investments that need to be made, the significant investments that need to be made in terms of capital, in terms of human resources, in terms of just the sheer brain power and the sheer muscle to get this thing to work and be there day in, day out and do the work and stay on topic until you deliver the goods, that we're not seeing. So yes, the palliatives come, but if you give me bread this morning, and I don't know if you're going to come back in 6 months when you need my goods, you don't come back, you might still be alive by then, we don't know. So absolutely, yes, the relief keeps people alive, but you have to do more than relief. It has to be communicated very clearly.
All right, let's also talk about the private sector. You know, does the private sector come in? Do they have a role, or is there, you know, an avenue that they can help to also bridge the gap in the areas that we've seen some maybe failing?
And religious organizations too.
Well, absolutely. I mean, the truth of the matter is the government sets the environment in which we all operate. So the number one and primary duty of government is to secure the lives and property of the people. And if the people are falling into poverty, they're not securing their livelihoods in any way, shape, or form. And you see people dying off from needless things, malnutrition, and all sorts of things. So the government has to set the environment so that private sector and all who are involved get in there. Now, private sector is already doing a lot in terms of corporate social responsibility in those interventions, but they can only work within the framework of what the government provides them with. In terms of they have to adhere to certain laws, there have to be incentives. Even till today, as we're talking to you, there's no clear law from the government that says to companies or private sector entities or even to individuals that if you donate to social programs or donate to charity or whatever, you get tax reliefs. It's not clear, right? That has not even been clearly at least communicated in the new tax laws, which we don't even know which one we're following now, right? But hey, that's another day. The private sector, they also pay huge taxes. In fact, Lagos State called me, and we individuals pay taxes too. The Lagos State government called me the other day, LIRS, that they were going to send me a letter. And I said to them, you people are busy. I love your efficiency with tax collection. I wish you were as efficient with clearing trash, with making sure that the place is clean, with dealing with traffic issues and so on. So please tell your leaders, you are doing your job, I know, but please tell your leaders that we need this kind of efficiency in service delivery so that we can have a better environment to work in and you can get more taxes, right? So these are the things. If they don't set the tone, it's very difficult for companies to even be incentivized to do more. But they also work within a framework. There are certain things only government can do. For example, governments can do roads. Believe it or not, if you were here many years ago, it was Zenith Bank that did Joseph Adiogun. If we remember, it was part of their corporate social responsibility. But they were working in tandem with government, and government allowed them to do that. Now, there are some communities you go to, there are companies who even want to do the roads to improve community interaction, to improve access to markets, even for those who are in the communities. Companies want to do it. And we keep hearing that when they go to the local government or even to state governments to say, let us do this road, they say, no, give us the money to do it. Meanwhile, they don't have the capacity to do it. There's no political will to get it done properly. Look at Joseph Adiogun, see the job Zenith Bank did. Till today, have you seen those paving stones sinking and whatever? Because it's a quality job brought in with all that expertise. So it was, what do they call it? Public-private
partnership.
PPP, whatever. And they did it under the spirit. For me, I think that was a real case study. It's a pity that whatever lessons were learned have not been replicated across the country or across even the state. But these are the kinds of things. If you have an enabling environment, then everyone can work together. But if I want, as a company, I want to go and do what is right, or even as an individual, you're not giving me incentives. In fact, when I go, you are coming to even ask me. In some states, we even hear. In my own state, I've heard of that experience in Benue State, where companies come, they want to do things, and the government officials themselves are busy asking them, what's in it for me personally? I want my company to get it. So the corruption, too, does not help.
So it's also a factor.
Even the little that church groups are doing a lot in what they can do. We all know they organize all sorts of outreaches. We see them, they're trying to feed the poor, they're whatever and whatever, and absolutely they have to, because that is their own duty before the deities that they serve or God that they serve. But or religious groups, try and do their part. But the reason we have ceded authority to the government and we allow them to collect taxes from us is to secure us, to make sure that they provide an enabling environment. And if they're failing, then we need to begin to ask them questions and call on them to do better. If they cannot do better, they should shift. Others can come in and do a better job.
Now, finally, here, before we let you go, you did mention industrialization in your opening statements. And just driving around Lagos, you see an army of young men, able-bodied men, just whiling away. It's a very sad scene and situation that we find ourselves. And that scene plays out in most parts of the country. How important is it to move from consumption to production to get our industry working in order to, get these people gainfully employed and reduce poverty in the land?
It's absolutely critical. One of the reasons I stopped supporting the big major political parties well over 20 years ago was because I just thought they were not serious. And the administrations that they did were not serious. Because there are certain things that should be critical national emergencies. Number one, power. 2, water, pipe-borne water. 3, education, working on your human capital development. 4, health. These 4 sectors, if you're not ready to really do that, of course, security, right? And that's even become more relevant now in our context. If you're not ready to do the hard and work that you need to do, then that's a problem. I remember when Dora Akunyili of blessed memory, Dr. Dora Akunyili of blessed memory, was heading NAFDAC. I heard stories about some group of people who had very high connections in this country, up to the presidency, who had brought in a shipment of questionable drugs, and they were stopped. And they said, these drugs and whatever. Of course, you know how they went lobbying and all of that. And they actually reached a very powerful person in this country. I will not mention the name. And the person said to them that, sorry, you have to go back and sort yourself out. On this one, we have agreed to let Dora Akunyili work and to let NAFDAC work. Now, if that was the political will there, how come we were not able to apply that to the critical areas of electricity, of roads, of health, of education, where there's so much corruption? Even the way we unbundled NEPA or whatever they called it at that time, it was fraught, and it's still fraught with all sorts of questions, and which is why we cannot get 24-hour power. If in the absence of that, if it is too much work even, why not have clear industrial zones that are guaranteed power over a period of time so that we can really activate job creation. We have the same situation with children begging on the streets. These are the young people that over the years, as far back as 20, if someone who was a child in 1999, they are now what, 30 something or in their 40s. The investments that should have been made, not just money, right? They've always been allocating money for certain things, but the political will, the job to get it done, to have the right people in the right places, to make sure we have children off the streets begging, because these are your future terrorists, the future recruits, and they're the ones now terrorizing the country now. When I saw that these are our successful administrations were not serious about this, I knew that we were going to have a problem many, many years ago. And they've allowed this thing to proliferate. Not only, it has spread all across the nation. So we have this quote unquote Almajiri culture, begging culture of people just sitting. Even as far back, I remember 1997, when I first became conscious of this. You just see young people just wake up, young men especially, able-bodied, just sit there looking. It's a security threat. And apart from that, what are they doing? Now we have them graduating, and what are they doing? Security guards. Well, nothing wrong with being a security guard, but if you have potential to be more, the state should be able to work to help you realize your full potential. And we have them doing all sorts of jobs that are below, they are underemployed. That's the right word in economics,
Absolutely.
Right? Yes, so those are some of the things that our governments are not looking at. Like I said, there's no pathway for any segment of the population to do well. Even the quote-unquote elderly, those that have retired, we have school teachers. This is latent skills, knowledge that is just there wasting. What about even having programs for elderly people to be able to transfer those skills to younger people? These are things, yes, sometimes they come up with these ideas, but there's no political will to follow through. Sometimes even the wrong people, we have the wrong people who are heading those programs. Instead, one of the other banes of our nation is so-called political settlement. We put in the wrong people in the wrong jobs because they helped a particular governor, a president, or whoever win an election.
All right.
We need to kill this and become a merit-based society.
Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us this morning. We do appreciate them, and we hope that we can see measurable impact flowing from this. Thank you.